All right, back in action. What up, childrens? Old man shouting at clouds. Topic of today's conversation is consistency. Boy, does that sound like a fun one. I'm sure you can't wait. But this is super, I'd say this in every video. This is super important. But it is. So, why talk about consistency? I think it's an incredibly underrated trait. And I think it's something that doesn't get enough focus. So we have a habit at least in our culture, in our society right now, of we focus on the result, right? Somebody comes out with a hit song and we're like, wow, they came out of nowhere. Or some athlete bursts onto the scene with your favorite sports team and is like dominant all of a sudden. And we're like, wow, they came out of nowhere. Well, no. Typically, all we're seeing is the end result of a very, 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 very long journey. Okay? Sam, you should know this. You have a poster hanging on your wall of Messi, possibly the greatest soccer player ever. And I'm going to paraphrase this. I won't get it right, but the quote on this poster goes something along the lines of, "It only took me 20 years of insane effort and dedication to become an overnight success." And I think I could be getting that one wrong, but lots of people who have reached the mountaintop have responded to a question of like, wow, what does it feel like to be an overnight success? Or all of a sudden you've got all this success, with a similar message, which is, you might seem out of nowhere to you, but I've been on this train, I've been on this grind for a very long time. You're just seeing the end results. And that brings us to something, because, when all we focus on is the last thing that happened, which is usually the thing that propels this person or this band or whatever into the spotlight, we're missing everything that happened before then. And that stuff is the important stuff, okay? That work, the showing up time and time and time again, is what gave them the opportunity to actually become successful, right? You may have started to notice these things in life, but the first time you try most things, you're not very good at it, okay? You might be horrendous at it, but you might be okay at it, but probably you're not good at it. Even if you have some aptitude for the thing, it still requires a lot of practice to hone skills and become great at something. And that's not something we spend nearly enough time talking about or focusing on. If you spend enough time and energy doing something, you can get pretty darn good at pretty much anything. Okay? Pretty darn good. And the reason most people don't ever find that out is because they quit well before they develop proficiency. Okay? So you may see this in sports. You may see a kid who goes out for a sports team, tries it out, and after a couple of games, they're done, right? Sam, you actually had this with wrestling, where you went to a few tournaments, and like, wrestling's a tough sport, man. I'm not throwing any shade at you, but you got flat backed a couple times and you didn't like it, and you were done. Well, you had finished second in a couple of tournaments. You definitely had an aptitude for it, but you weren't willing to push through the discomfort, and believe me, most people aren't, of getting physically dominated in front of a crowd full of people. That's a tough thing to deal with. But that's exactly what happens to most people at most things they're interested in, is they start doing it. And nobody really tells you in life that you have to spend an awful lot of time being bad at something before you ever get to be good at it. And that's true of anything, okay? Like, you guys hear me play guitar now, and sometimes, Sam, you're like, wow, you can play that song. That's cool. That's awesome. I wish I could do that. And I'm like, you can. But you have to deal with 10 years of being really bad at it, like I did, before you can play that song. Okay? I didn't wake up one day and just God came down from on high and kissed my forehead and all of a sudden I knew how to play it. I spent a lot of years being really bad at it. I spent a lot of weeks like wanting to throw my guitar across my bedroom because I couldn't play it. But if you stick with it long enough, you figure it out. And it's hard to, honestly, the reason why I don't think more people do that is because the act of being bad at something is really unpleasant. It's not enjoyable, okay? So, like, the first 40 times I played, I don't know, pick a song, Little Wing. The first 40 times I played Little Wing by Jimi Hendrix, I was atrocious at it, okay? I couldn't figure out how he was doing what he was doing. And it, maybe a really trained ear, maybe somebody who's heard the song Little Wing 500 million times would have maybe pieced together that was what I was trying to play, but it sure didn't sound like Jimi Hendrix. Now, you could make a strong argument that it doesn't sound like Jimi Hendrix today when I play it, but it sounds like Little Wing, okay? If people have heard that song, they're going to be like, oh, that's what he's playing. They'll recognize it. But it took a long time to get there. And I had to be willing to go through the frustration of, okay, I can't play this song at that speed. I'm going to have to slow it down. Oh, I still can't play this song at this speed. I'm going to have to slow it down more. And it got to the point where, I had to take it kind of bar by bar. I had to play the chord progressions over and over and over and over again just for like the intro to the song. I had to play that intro to the song hundreds of times before it ever got recognizable. That's the level of consistency you need to develop aptitude at pretty much anything, okay? Anything worth doing. And that is, I think, why, and now maybe you listen to this video and you're like, well, cool story, Dad. But if it's that easy, why doesn't everyone do it? Well, that's the whole point of this video. The reason everyone doesn't do it is because that's hard. Most people don't have the tenacity to keep on coming back when the thing they want to be good at keeps kicking them in the teeth. Okay? Greatness isn't for everyone. Now, you don't have to be great, but you could be really good. There's a future in really good. There's a place for really good. There's even a place for average. But you're not going to get to any of those levels if you aren't consistent. Now, how consistent you are will determine the level you reach. Now, here's another unpopular thing a lot of people won't tell you. Genetics, natural gifts factor into that, right? So let's say you're not very gifted naturally, but you're super tenacious and consistent. You'll get pretty good. You might not ever get elite, but you'll get pretty darn good. Now, if you're a little less consistent, but you're like naturally godlike talented, you're going to end up probably higher, better than the person who had no natural talent but was just super consistent and tenacious. The talented person is probably going to win 8 times out of 10 there. But guess what? The untalented person who was just tenacious and stuck with it still did way better than they ever would have done, and still did better than probably a lot of talented people with no work ethic. So if you want to squeeze all of the juice out of the thing that you like, the best way to ensure that you do that is to just keep showing up, okay? When I started doing jiu-jitsu, one of the things that I heard over and over and over again from people with black belts and brown belts and purple belts was they're like, I'm just a white belt who kept showing up. I'm just a white belt who didn't tap out. Or definitely tap out, depending on the situation. Don't get your arm broken in half. But what they meant was, No matter how many times they got their face smashed into the mat, no matter how many times they got choked out or arm barred, guillotined, they just kept coming back. They kept coming back. And eventually, instead of being the person with their face mushed in the mat, they started mushing other people's faces in the mat. But that didn't happen by accident. It happened because they kept coming back. Every time they got smashed into the mat, they got back up. And that is the only path that you can count on to aptitude, to proficiency, to skill. Maybe someday, if you're lucky enough, greatness. But there's no shortcut, okay? There is no shortcut. The answer is keep showing up. School, don't understand this subject. Maybe you don't understand math. Keep showing up. Keep showing up. Keep doing your homework. Keep reading the textbook. Eventually, things that didn't make sense before will start to make sense. It may take more effort, but it'll get you there in the end, okay? Quitting, there's only one way that turns out, okay? There's only one outcome possible when you quit. Failure. That's it. You've guaranteed it. Now, there are going to be some things in life that no matter how hard you try, you're just never going to be great at because you don't have the natural aptitude, natural skill set. You could get proficient, but you're probably never going to be great at it. I'm not sitting here telling you that every single thing in life you need to be like dogmatically dedicated to. No, that's not the point. We do have to pick and choose where we invest our effort, okay? So if there's something that you're just not getting the hang of it, if it's not a requirement, now obviously like math class in school, if you have to take the class to pass, or if you have to pass the class to graduate, sorry, you're going to have to invest whatever level of effort is required to get that passing grade. I hope you don't settle for passing grades. I would tell you that life's a whole lot better when you do your best and, you're shooting for the best possible grade you can get. And honestly, I think knowing you guys, I don't see any reason you can't get A's or at least B's. You're smart enough kids. You can figure out how to do that well. But there are going to be places in life, like, for example, me. I loved basketball growing up. Loved it. I loved to play basketball. It was my favorite sport to play, probably by a mile. I would go outside in the driveway. We had a basketball hoop. I would shoot hoops for hours after school. I would go to the park and play pick up games of basketball with my friends for hours on a Saturday or a Sunday. I loved it. I would go to the gym and I would play pick up basketball with random people I'd never met. Loved it. Loved it. But I was done growing in 8th grade at 5'10". The ceiling was pretty low as far as how far my basketball career was going to go. If you look up the statistics, they're not ambiguous. Being tall and long is key to being elite in basketball. Now, could I have made some kind of a career out of basketball? Yeah, maybe. NBA probably wasn't in the cards for me, but maybe I could have played in college, and maybe I could have gone on and coached, or maybe I could have learned how to, and become a scout for a professional basketball team. Maybe I could have coached in college or in high school or something, or become an announcer. Like, there are all different ways to make the thing you love work for you, even if it's not like the pinnacle of what you wanted to do. But I didn't. I chose to not invest my energy in that thing. And, things have turned out pretty well for me. Could they have turned out better? Maybe. But I did not understand the consistency lesson at that point in my life. So when I saw that, in all likelihood, greatness was not in store for me in basketball, I reinvested my energy elsewhere. That's okay. Sometimes that's going to happen. Maybe you really want to be an engineer right now, but you start taking high school level math classes and they absolutely kill you. And, it takes every ounce of your work ethic and capabilities to scrape B's. Well, maybe engineering isn't the career path for you then. Maybe there's another career path. Like maybe you wanted to be an automotive engineer and work on fast cars, but the math is just killing you. Okay, so maybe engineering isn't the path, but maybe you could go into marketing for one of those companies and you can still spend your time working with the thing you love. But you got to show up. You got to keep showing up, and you've got to really dedicate yourself to that craft if you want to be good at it or if you want to be great. So at any rate, I hope I've given enough examples here. I hope you'll tell me if I didn't. If there's something that's confusing you and you want to talk about this further, well, you know where to find me. And, let me know and we'll dive into it deeper. Otherwise, I hope this one lands for you because it's a critical lesson to learn as early as you can, and it's a critical skill to develop and make a habit as early as you can. And your ability to be successful doing that is going to go a long way in determining how much success you can have later on in life. So, love you very much, and we'll talk to you next time.